as I said, right, you guys can raise your hands. I see Milan has his hand raised. Let me make this a little smaller. Would you like to go for number one?
Yep. The sum of all of the biochemical processes going on within the human body at any given time is called metabolism.
Metabolism is correct. Metabolism is correct. All right. Then we go to number three. We got Irene. Would you like to go next?
Reactions within blank provide most of the energy needed by a typical cell. C, the mitochondria.
Very good, right? And do you remember how much ATP if we have mitochondria and oxygen?
30 to 32.
Very good. Very good. All right. Number five, we have Lindsay for number five.
Metabolism can be defined as anabolism minus catabolism.
Yeah, this one is a little tricky, but they basically, I agree, this question is a little tricky. So they say it's anabolism plus catabolism. So basically, how much you bring in and how much you basically use up. I could see why you would say subtracting that, but they state it as plus. I wouldn't. I would not put a question like this on your exam, to be honest with you. But we have it here. But C is the correct choice here. All right. Now we go to number 8. We have Helmi. Would you like to go number 8?
Glycolytic breakdown of glucose first result in molecule 4 ATP. C will be C.
So initially, when you break down, remember, I was. Let me go back to this diagram as I was drawing, right? So when you break down the glucose, right, you arrive here, right? So you only make 2 ATP. Remember that, right? With glycolysis. So for number 8, right, the correct choice would be A. Because you only make 2 ATP, right? You don't make 4. You don't make 4. And then the breakdown, right, the first results in 2-pyruvate. So for 8, choice is A. All right. Now we got number 11. I see. All right. If you guys want to answer, raise your hands. Then otherwise, I'm not going to call on you. We'll go back to Ian for number 11.
The function of the citric acid cycle is to, I put C, hydrolyze glucose.
So it doesn't hydrolyze glucose. I know I didn't go too much in depth in this, but the function here, right, is this. I'll show you. Let me show you 1 second. Let me go back to that. So it's basically remove hydrogen atoms and then place them on these coenzymes. You see how it's taking the NAD and it's making NADH, 1, 2, 3, and then it has the FADH. So the whole purpose of this, right, is to remove the hydrogen atoms from the essentially glucose and transfer them to these coenzymes. Why? Because later on, right, when we come here, we want to have this to drive our electron transport chain, right? I know I didn't spend too much time on the citric acid cycle, but the whole purpose of this, the citric acid, is to make this. These are electron transport carriers. They get their hydrogen from removal of these hydrogen from glucose, as I was drawing it earlier, right? And then basically driving this electron transport chain to get this. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me go back to number 11. So A is the removal of hydrogen atoms from the organic molecules being glucose, right? For our purpose, and transfer them to these coenzymes, NAD, FAD, right, to drive that. So that's number 11. All right. So next question, we got number 17. 17, we go to Milan.
Poisons like cyanide bind to, I want to say enzymes and prevent electron transfer. I'm not sure.
So not particular the enzymes, they actually bind to cytochromes. I'll show you, let me show you this image. So they bind to cytochromes and they don't allow this electron transport chain to go forward. So let me go back. There was a good image here that shows this, right? Cytochrome. So what it happens is the cyanide molecules, they make this part inactive. If they make this part inactive, right, you cannot move these electron carriers NADH forward. You see how NADH is basically getting rid of its hydrogen, right? And FADH is getting rid of its hydrogen. If you basically block this process, you cannot have this going forward like this. If you do not have this going forward like this, there's no more hydrogens are coming out into this outer membrane, intermembrane space, I should say, intermembrane space. If they're not making its way into the intermembrane space, you cannot drive this ATP synthase. You cannot do this. So then the cyanide basically disables this. So that's why we give them the medication, right? Hydroxycobalamin and sodium thiosulfate in order to basically uncouple, to remove the poison and eliminate it in the body. But cyanide works by, at this point particularly, the cytochromes, and does not allow this electron transport chain to go forward. Just if you guys remember, right, the difference between carbon monoxide was holding on to the hemoglobin more tighter, right, and not allowing oxygen to basically offload. So those are the differences. So for 17 choices is D. I know I didn't spend much time explaining this. All right. After Milan, we go to Irene for number 19.
In oxidative phosphorylation, energy from the synthesis of ATP is directly obtained from C, movement of hydrogen ions through the channels in the inner mitochondrial membrane.
Very good, right? So that's what we were showing. I was showing you guys, right? Yeah, so the hydrogen ions from these FADH, FADH2, NADH, these high energy carriers of these hydrogen, right? They are basically that movement of hydrogen ions through the channels to the inner membrane is what's going to drive this ATP synthase. So very good. Number 19 was C, is the correct choice. All right, number 20, we go to Lindsay.
Blank creates 90% of the ATP normally generated.
So this
glycolysis.
is not 32. This is the number 90%. So out of this, where's 90% of this comes from?
C.
What would you say?
No,
I said oxidative.
Yeah.
I said glycolysis. C. But it's C?
It's not glycolysis, because why is it not glycolysis? How much do we make in glycolysis only? What is the net? Net was 2, right?
Oh, right.
And what was this?
Yeah, because you need the oxygen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
it's
need
hypoxic. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 32 ATP, right? So this was the primary. That's what we want. If we don't get this, we get this, which is very little, right? So for 20, the choice is C, right? 90%, the majority of our ATP is made in oxidative phosphorylation done in the mitochondrial inner membrane, right, with driving ATP synthase. Okay. 21, we go to Brian.
Although other nutrients can feed into the citric acid cycle, blank yields energy the quickest. B, glucose.
Glucose is correct, right? That's what we want. Glucose monomeric form. Very good. Number 22. Ari, would you like to go?
Sure. 22. Which step of glucose metabolism yields the greatest amount of ATP? The greatest is going to be combined glycolysis and citric acid cycle.
But is the citric acid cycle where actually you make the boatload of ATP, or citric acid cycle is where you make these guys?
That's where you make those guys.
Yeah,
the
so
electric transport chain
exactly
is like
exactly from here it goes here, right? this is where you make, remember that ATP synthase that rotates, right? And it's bringing that hydrogen in, and that's where you pump out ATP. And that's where you make 32 ATP. So yeah, so for 22, the choice is B. The greatest amount is usually the electron transport chain or the electron transport system. Okay. 24, we got Jackson. Would you like to go, Jackson, for 24?
Yeah, the process of synthesizing glucose from non-carb is called
Non-carbohydrates. So basically, you're making sugar from non-carbohydrates being like amino acids, right? Fatty acids.
B, glycolysis.
Which letter?
B.
B. So glucogenesis, this is where you basically, glucogenesis, you store glucose. This is storage. Remember, I was explaining it here. And let me go back to that, right? This. So glucogenesis, you basically, you store. You take glucose and you store in the form of glycogen, right? But we said we want to form glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. So gluconeo, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, 24 is here, right? So if you after seeing that, right, it says from non-carbohydrate sources, how would you adjust your answer?
D.
D, very good, right? So make sure when you have these choices, they kind of look confusing, but spend a little bit just to go through the choices, and then I'm like, all right, I see neo. Neo means new sources. So new sources, they're non-carbohydrate sources. Okay, 24 is that. Number 25, we have Crystal.
Glycolysis breaks down glucose into what? Pyruvate? D?
Exactly, right? And remember how much pyruvate per one glucose? One glucose, how much pyruvate? How much pyruvate do you get per glucose? Do you recall?
2.
2. 2 is correct. Yep, 2 is correct. 26. All right. 26, we go back to, I don't see anyone else. I see back to Ian.
In the process of digestion, most nutrient absorption takes place in the small intestine.
Small intestine is the correct choice. Very good. Milan. Milan is next for number 27.
How are most nutrients absorbed in the digestive tract eventually transported out of the digestive system?
Think about glucose. What are we talking about?
C.
Yeah, very good. So initially, right, they come in through the hepatic portal vein to the liver, right? So that, if you remember that, that's good. All your drugs, right? You take orally, you take any PO drugs, you swallow them, GI tract to the liver for first pass, right? And then it gets metabolized in there, right? 36. We go to Irene.
Okay, the nutrients that yield the most energy per gram when metabolized are A, carbohydrates.
Yeah, so this one is a little tricky, right? So if you remember your kilocalories, right? If you look at the labels, carbohydrates make about 4, proteins make 4, lipids make about 9, right? So truly speaking, the nutrients that yield the most energy per gram
would be C.
Is lipids, right? And it's also how much you could withdraw. Like when you have lipids, you have basically these carbon chains, right? We call them hydrocarbons. So it's carbons that have hydrogen attached to it, right? And this chain can go on and on and on, right? So this is our chain, right? Make sense? Now, when I was showing you glucose, right? This was our glucose. So I want to show you something here. So you see here, this carbon, right? You see how it's sharing electrons with hydrogens? Usually, because carbon is more electronegative, and there's 2 electrons here, it will and here it will pull all of these from hydrogens, and it will share between carbon. So this one will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So its oxidation state would be 7. This carbon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all these hydrocarbons, all these carbons, 6, 7, 6, right? But here, because you have oxygens, they're more electronegatives. This will not be the case. Here, this carbon has 2 from this hydrogen. This oxygen pulls everything, and it has 1 from this carbon. So this one is 3, right? This one will be 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you see, if I keep going down the chain, there's less amount of hydrogen that will be available as they start to break up, as opposed to a lipid. Lipid, this is a carb. So lipid will have more. And also, if you look at the kilocalories, right, this will has 9 proteins and carbs have 4. So 36, the choice is C, right? After everyone, we'll go to Lindsay for number 55.
Deficiency in what vitamin can result in a condition called scurvy? B, vitamin C.
Yeah, so this, where this came, scurvy, right? A lot when, back in the day, people used to travel, right, on ships, and they would go for these long voyages, and lack of vitamin C, right, they basically developed this condition where they have curvature, right? And they used to call them limeys because they would, bring limes on ships to basically combat this lack of deficiency. Yeah. 57 will go to Brian for 57.
The vitamin that is essential for the production of several clotting factors is vitamin E, K. Not vitamin E, but the letter E.
Which choice? Letter E, you said, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That I know this becomes. So vitamin K is the, remember, even though it doesn't spell right, K for clotting. Even though it's spelled with a C, but if you remember that, K for clotting, right? That's correct. Number 68, we go to Jackson.
And plant contains all the essential amino acids.
So what amino acids? Remember, amino acids make peptides.
Yeah.
Peptides are what? Peptide chains or make.
It's the D.
What would you say?
D.
D is correct, right? So all the essential amino acids are in your protein. Proteins being meats, right? Eggs, milk products, right? So stuff like that. So that's where you get most of your proteins. All right. So number 70, we go to next is Jessica.
Yep, sorry, I couldn't get it to unmute.
No worries.
The energy content of foods is commonly given in units of energy content, so carbohydrates.
So usually when you look at the label, right, that's what they mean, energy contents of foods. If you look at the label, right, what does the label show you?
The calories, the nutrients.
Yeah, kilocalories. So they'll say like if you see like the big C, right, the kilocalories. So yeah,
okay.
when they say the content, they usually refer to the kilocalories. That's usually found on the label. Okay. Any questions before we go to our next problem set? Or you guys are good?
Nick,
Yep.
just not in regards to questions, did you see the private message with them?
The only private messages I got is yeah, I see. That's fine. Yeah, as long as your name is in the, as long as you type in your chat your name, you are fine. So no worries there. And the other questions I got is for neuro chapter. As I said, the videos were posted. So then, if there's nothing else, we'll go back to our digestive system. We'll start back with Ian for number 15.
Okay. In the digestive and urinary systems, rings of smooth muscles called sphincters. Hold on, I got to move my phone. Regulate the movement of materials along internal passageway.
Yeah, sphincters is correct, right? We're talking about, you have sphincters, pyloric sphincter, upper esophageal sphincter, you have the anal sphincter, right? So these sphincters control the passage. So yes, you're absolutely right. After Ian, we got Milan for number 18.
Waves of muscular contractions that propel the contents of the digestive tract are called peristalsis.
Peristalsis is correct. Yep, that's how we move. By the way, any patients who gets a lot of narcotics, either for treatment or for if they're on chronic, like pain management, they'll have issues, right? They'll have constipation. Their peristaltic motions are not as good. So it's something to be cognizant of someone who is on chronic, pain management. So keep that in mind. Okay, number 19, we go to Irene.
Okay, I'm not sure about this one, but I'll try my best. The physiological activities of the digestive system are not regulated by that. I know. It is regulated by hormones. Parasympathetic it is. Contents digestive tract. Well, the contents. Intrinsic. You know what? I don't know.
Okay, so the answer choice here is E, and why? Because the cerebral cortex is a higher level center, right? It controls the higher, like you interpret stimuli, you reason through your things. So the cerebral cortex is a higher level center, and all your physiological activities of your GI tract, it's not, you don't think about it. You don't think like, let me digest this protein into amino acids. Let me digest this, carb I just ate my pasta into, right? Glucose. So the cerebral cortex is not going to utilize energy to basically perform the physiologic activities, but all these other ones are, in fact, there. Okay.
Thank you.
So yeah, number 23, we go to Lindsay.
Chemical breakdown of materials by acid and enzyme takes place in the stomach.
Stomach is correct, right? Hydrochloric acid, specifically, right? HCl. So C is correct for number 23. We go to Brian for number 29.
Carbohydrate digestion begins in the mouth.
Yeah, and then we basically have amylase from in the saliva, and it's secreted, right, by the glands in your mouth. And so we have the amylase that starts to chop up these sugars, right, that you ate, pasta, bread, whatever you ate, into glucose, right? So we basically want the glucose. That's why do you suppose we put, diabetic, right? Blood glucose less than 60, but they're still able to follow commands. We put what? We put oral glucose. Where we put it? In the mouth, right? So why? So the amylase starts to chop it up, hopefully get it to become bioavailable into your bloodstream. Okay, and this concludes our questions for this problem set.